The Boeing 777 shuddered through turbulence at 37,000 feet, somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. Most passengers slept fitfully in the dimmed cabin, unaware that Captain Morrison had just received the most terrifying message of his 20-year career. The encrypted transmission crackled through his headset. United 847, be advised, military intercept protocol is now active. You have an unidentified object packing your aircraft at 2 o'clock, maintaining formation for the past 17 minutes. Morrison's hands tightened on the controls as he peered through the cockpit window. There, gleaming in the moonlight, was something that shouldn't exist, a sleek, angular aircraft unlike anything in current service, its surfaces seeming to bend light around its edges. No running lights, no radio response, just silent, deadly precision as it matched their every movement. "Sir," his co-pilot whispered, voice cracking, "what do we do?" The mystery aircraft suddenly banked left, revealing weapons pods beneath its wings. Morrison's blood turned to ice. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't friendly, and they were carrying 312 souls with nowhere to run. In row 12, seat C, Lieutenant Colonel Kira Ghost Thorne stirred in her sleep. Even unconscious, her body recognized the subtle change in engine harmonics, the way the aircraft's nose dipped slightly as the captain reduced throttle. 23 years of military aviation had programmed these responses into her DNA. Her eyes snapped open, instantly alert, scanning the cabin with the practiced assessment of someone who'd spent more time in combat zones than most people spent in their own homes. The flight attendants were trying to look calm, but Kira caught the micro-expressions, the tightness around their eyes, the way they kept glancing toward the cockpit door. Something was wrong, very wrong. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood, her movement fluid despite the turbulence. At 45, she might have been dismissed by younger pilots as past her prime, but Kira had learned that survival often depended on reading situations others missed. The passengers around her remained oblivious, lost in their movies and sleep masks, but she could feel the aircraft's distress like a living thing. The captain's voice suddenly crackled over the intercom, steady but strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Morrison. We're experiencing some navigational challenges. If there are any trained military pilots on board, please identify yourselves to the flight crew immediately." The cabin fell silent. Kira was already moving toward the front of the aircraft, her reflection catching in the dark windows. A woman the Pentagon had once called too aggressive for her own good, walking toward whatever hell waited in the cockpit. Captain Morrison looked up as she approached, taking in her civilian clothes and graying temples. "Ma'am, I appreciate your willingness to help, but we need someone with current." 23 years military aviation, Kira interrupted quietly. F-22 Raptor pilot, instructor and test pilot, 2 combat tour. What's the situation? Morrison hesitated for exactly 3 seconds before stepping aside. Through the cockpit window, the mysterious aircraft maintained its ominous formation, its pilot clearly waiting for something. Kira studied the craft with professional interest, noting its unusual configuration, the way it seemed to absorb radar waves rather than reflect them. "How long has it been shadowing us?" she asked, settling into the jump seat. 19 minutes. No response to radio contact. We've tried every frequency." Morrison's voice carried the weight of impending disaster. "Air traffic control says there's nothing on their screens." Kira nodded, her mind already working through possibilities. She'd seen experimental aircraft before, flown some of them herself. But this was different. The design philosophy was wrong, too advanced, too alien. It moved with an intelligence that suggested either revolutionary AI or a human pilot with capabilities that defied current understanding. "Have you tried?" she began, then stopped. The mystery aircraft was changing position, moving closer to their starboard wing. Its proximity revealed details that made her blood run cold. The cockpit design was wrong, the proportions inhuman. Whatever was flying that machine, it wasn't entirely human. The radio crackled to life with a voice that sounded like grinding metal filtered through digital processors. United 847, you are carrying cargo that belongs to us. Prepare for boarding procedures. Morrison looked at Kira with desperate eyes. Colonel, I don't suppose you have any ideas. Kira studied the mystery aircraft's positioning, noting how it maintained perfect formation despite the commercial airliner's relatively crude flight characteristics. The pilot, or whatever controlled it, possessed skills that rivaled her own. But she'd faced impossible odds before, and she'd learned something that no flight manual taught. Sometimes survival meant embracing the very chaos that threatened to destroy you. She reached for the radio transmitter, her voice cutting through the static with calm authority. Unknown aircraft, this is Lieutenant Colonel Kira Thorne, United States Air Force. State your intentions and identify yourself according to international aviation protocols. The response came immediately, tinged with what might have been amusement. Colonel Thorne, your reputation precedes you. We have been monitoring your career with great interest. The words sent ice through her veins. Whatever these beings were, they knew her personally. They'd been watching, waiting, planning. But why? What cargo could a civilian airliner possibly carry that warranted this level of attention? Morrison leaned close, whispering urgently. Colonel, the manifest shows we're carrying medical supplies to Tokyo. Nothing classified, nothing military. Kira's mind raced through possibilities. Medical supplies. Tokyo. Then it hit her, the passenger manifest. She grabbed the tablet displaying the flight roster, scanning names until she found what she was looking for. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Seat 15F, the quantum physicist who disappeared from Los Alamos 3 months ago, presumed dead after a laboratory accident involving experimental materials. They're not after cargo, Kira realized aloud. They're after a passenger. The mystery aircraft suddenly accelerated, moving to block their forward path. Its weapons systems powered up with an ominous whine that vibrated through the commercial airliner's hull. Whatever these beings wanted, they were prepared to kill 300 innocent people to get it. Morrison's hands trembled on the controls. Colonel, you have any experience with this kind of situation? Kira almost smiled. If only he knew. More than you might think, Captain, but we're going to need to get creative. She turned to face the cabin, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether they lived or died. The sleeping passengers had no idea they were about to become participants in a conflict that had been brewing in the shadows for decades. The mystery aircraft moved closer, its alien geometry reflecting the moonlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Kira had spent her career pushing the boundaries of what was possible in the sky, but she was about to discover that some boundaries were meant to be broken. Her call sign wasn't Ghost, because she was quiet or stealthy. It was because she had a talent for appearing where the enemy least expected her, for finding solutions in the spaces between impossibility and death. Tonight, 312 lives depended on that talent. The radio crackled again. Colonel Thorne, you have 60 seconds to comply. Deliver Dr. Vasquez to us, or all aboard your aircraft will share her fate. Kira keyed the transmitter, her voice steady as granite. Unknown aircraft, this is Ghost. You want her, come and take her. The mystery aircraft's response was immediate and terrifying. It rolled inverted and dove beneath the commercial airliner, its weapons systems tracking upward toward the passenger compartment. Through the floor, Kira could hear the subtle vibration of targeting lasers painting the aircraft's hull. Morrison's training kicked in as he initiated evasive maneuvers, but the massive airliner responded like a wounded elephant compared to the predatory grace of their pursuer. Banking left at their current altitude and airspeed risked structural failure, but maintaining course guaranteed death for everyone aboard. Colonel, Morrison said through gritted teeth, I need options. Kira was already moving, her mind cataloging the 777's capabilities against an opponent that defied conventional understanding. She'd flown against every aircraft in the American arsenal, knew their strengths and weaknesses intimately. But this thing, whatever it was, operated according to principles that existed decades ahead of current technology. The aircraft shuddered as something struck the outer hull, not quite hard enough to breach the pressure vessel, but sufficient to send a clear message. Through the intercom, Kira could hear passengers beginning to panic as the cabin lights flickered. They were running out of time. She grabbed the aircraft manual and flipped to the emergency procedures section, searching for anything that might give them an edge. The 777 wasn't designed for combat, but every aircraft had capabilities beyond its intended specifications. The trick was finding them before it was too late. "Captain, what's our fuel status?" 12 hours remaining at current consumption. Kira nodded, a plan forming in her mind. It was insane, probably suicidal, but it was the only chance they had. She turned to Morrison, meeting his eyes with the kind of steady confidence that had earned her the respect of pilots half her age. "I need you to trust me completely. Can you do that?" Morrison looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "What do you need?" "I need you to put this aircraft into a controlled dive. Steep angle, maximum rate of descent that won't tear us apart." "Ma'am, that's—" "Captain," her voice cut through his protest like a blade, "I've been flying combat missions since before you got your commercial license. Trust me." The mystery aircraft was climbing now, positioning itself directly above them. Whatever weapons it carried were designed for precision strikes, not the kind of sustained engagement that would risk destroying their target. They wanted Dr. Vasquez alive, which meant they couldn't simply blast the airliner out of the sky. That was their advantage. Kira intended to use it. Morrison's hands moved to the controls with practiced precision, initiating a descent that sent several passengers screaming as their seatbelts strained against the sudden change in G-forces. The mystery aircraft, caught off guard by the maneuver, overshot their position by several hundred yards. "Beautiful," Kira murmured, watching their pursuer scramble to reacquire formation. "Now level off and maintain heading." The maneuver had bought them perhaps 30 seconds, but it had also revealed something crucial about their enemy. Despite its advanced technology, the aircraft was still bound by the laws of physics. Its pilot, whatever it was, could be surprised, could make mistakes. They could be beaten. The radio erupted with an inhuman shriek of rage that made everyone in the cockpit wince. When the static cleared, the metallic voice returned, now edged with something that might have been respect. "Impressive, Colonel Thorne, but you merely delay the inevitable." Kira smiled grimly as she watched the mystery aircraft repositioning itself for another approach. "We'll see about that." She turned to Morrison, noting how his knuckles had gone white against the flight controls. The man was holding together well under circumstances that would have broken lesser pilots, but she could see the strain building behind his eyes. "Captain, I need you to contact air traffic control. Tell them we're declaring an emergency and requesting military escort." "Ma'am, the nearest fighter squadron is 2 hours out minimum." "I know." Kira's fingers drummed against the arm of her seat, her mind working through calculations that existed at the intersection of physics and desperation. "But I want our friends out there to know that help is coming." It was a bluff, but sometimes bluffs were all you had. The mystery aircraft had completed its repositioning maneuver and was now packing them at a distance of roughly 200 yards, close enough to maintain weapons lock, far enough to avoid any surprise maneuvers. Its pilot had learned from their previous encounter. That was both good and bad. Good because it suggested their enemy could be taught caution. Bad because cautious enemies were harder to defeat. Kira studied the craft's design through the cockpit window, noting details that her military training helped her interpret. The weapons pods were retracted slightly, suggesting energy-based systems that required time to charge between firings. The aircraft's flight pattern showed microcorrections that indicated either human pilot fatigue or AI processing limitations. Either way, it was information she could use. "Colonel," Morrison said quietly, "what exactly are we dealing with here?" Kira considered her answer carefully. The truth was classified at levels that required congressional oversight, but circumstances had moved far beyond normal protocol. "Captain, have you ever heard the term unacknowledged special access programs?" Morrison's expression told her he had some idea what she meant. Good. It would make the next part easier. 15 years ago, I was selected for a program that officially doesn't exist. We tested aircraft that weren't supposed to be possible, fought enemies that weren't supposed to be real. She gestured toward the mystery aircraft. That's one of theirs. Theirs? The opposition, the ones we've been fighting a shadow war against for decades. Kira's voice carried the weight of secrets that had defined her career. And Dr. Vasquez isn't just a physicist. She's the key to ending that war. The radio crackled again. "Time grows short, Colonel. Dr. Vasquez possesses information that belongs to us. Return what was stolen and your passengers will live." Kira keyed the transmitter without hesitation. "Negative. Dr. Vasquez is under the protection of the United States government. Any attempt to take her will be met with appropriate force." The laugh that came through the radio was like breaking glass. "You have no force to meet us with, Colonel. You pilot a civilian aircraft with no weapons, no defense systems, and no hope of escape." "Maybe," Kira replied, "but I have something you don't." "Which is?" Kira smiled as she reached for the cabin intercom button. 312 Americans who refused to surrender. Her voice echoed through the passenger compartment. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Lieutenant Colonel Kira Thorne, United States Air Force. I need your attention immediately." The cabin fell silent as Kira continued. "We're currently being pursued by hostile aircraft attempting to kidnap one of our passengers. I need everyone to move to the rear of the aircraft and prepare for emergency maneuvers." The response was immediate. Passengers began unbuckling and moving aft without panic, without questions, with the kind of calm determination that had defined American responses to crisis for generations. They didn't know what was happening, but they understood that their survival depended on following orders. Morrison watched in amazement as the cabin transformed from a collection of individuals into a unified team. "Colonel, how did you?" "Americans don't like being bullied," Kira said simply, "and they really don't like being told they can't win." The weight distribution change was already affecting the aircraft's flight characteristics. The nose pitched up slightly as the center of gravity shifted aft, changing their aerodynamic profile in subtle but important ways. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give them new options. The mystery aircraft adjusted its position to compensate, but Kira could see uncertainty in its movements. Its pilot hadn't expected this kind of coordinated response from civilian passengers. Good. Uncertainty was another weapon she could use. She turned to Morrison with renewed confidence. "Captain, are you ready to show these bastards what American aviation can do?" Morrison's answering smile was fierce with pride. "Yes, ma'am. What's the plan?" Kira pointed toward a bank of storm clouds ahead, their peaks towering to nearly 50,000 feet. "We're going to disappear." The mystery aircraft's weapons systems powered up as they approached the storm front, energy discharges creating coronal flares along its wing edges. Whatever these beings were, they understood that their window of opportunity was closing. They would have to act soon or risk losing their target in the chaos of the storm. Kira counted down the seconds in her head, waiting for the perfect moment. The storm clouds loomed ahead like mountains of vapor and electricity, promising either salvation or destruction. She'd flown through weather like this before, knew how it could hide an aircraft from both radar and visual detection. But she also knew how it could tear an aircraft apart. "Colonel," Morrison said, reading her thoughts, "the stress loads will be manageable if we're smart about it." Kira's hands moved over the instrument panel, calling up weather radar displays that showed the storm's internal structure. "There's a corridor through the worst of it, narrow but navigable." The mystery aircraft was closing distance now, its pilot apparently deciding to risk a close-range engagement rather than lose their quarry in the storm. Energy weapons began charging with an ominous whine that vibrated through the commercial airliner's hull. Kira waited until the last possible second, then grabbed the radio. "Now, Captain, into the storm." Morrison threw the aircraft into a banking dive that sent it plunging toward the towering clouds like a missile. The mystery aircraft, caught completely off guard, overshot again and found itself separated from its target by several miles of churning atmospheric chaos. But they weren't safe yet. The storm was a double-edged sword that could hide them from their enemies while simultaneously destroying them. Lightning flickered around the aircraft's hull as they penetrated the cloud wall, and turbulence began hammering them with increasing violence. In the passenger cabin, people prayed and held each other as their aircraft was tossed through the sky like a toy. But nobody screamed. Nobody panicked. They trusted the woman in the cockpit who had asked for their help, and they were determined not to let her down. Kira fought the controls as downdrafts tried to slam them into the ocean below, using every skill she'd learned in 23 years of flying to keep them alive. The storm was testing every rivet, every weld, every component of the aircraft's structure. But it was also hiding them from sensors that had tracked their every movement since this nightmare began. "Ghost, this is Control. We show you entering severe weather. What is your status?" Morrison looked at Kira in surprise. "Control, but we lost radio contact an hour ago." Kira smiled grimly as she keyed the transmitter. "Control, this is Ghost. We are alive and operational. Request immediate military support at our location." "Copy, Ghost. Raptor flight is en route. ETA 12 minutes." The mystery aircraft's voice cut through the radio chatter like a knife. "You cannot hide forever, Colonel. We will find you." "Maybe," Kira replied, guiding their aircraft through a lightning-filled corridor between towering thunderheads. "But by the time you do, this war will be over." She was right. In 12 minutes, F-22 Raptors would arrive to level the playing field. But 12 minutes was a lifetime in aerial combat, and their enemies weren't going to give up without a fight. The real battle was just beginning. Through the storm clouds, Kira caught glimpses of angular shapes moving with predatory grace. The mystery aircraft weren't alone. They'd brought friends. Whatever Dr. Vasquez knew, whatever secrets she carried, the enemy was prepared to commit significant resources to retrieving them. But Kira had learned something in her years of combat flying that no classroom could teach. Sometimes the most important victories came not from superior firepower, but from refusing to surrender when surrender seemed like the only logical option. Tonight, above the Pacific Ocean, that lesson would be tested to its absolute limits. The F-22 Raptors arrived exactly 12 minutes later, their stealth profiles barely visible even on military radar as they sliced through the storm clouds like avenging angels. Major Sarah Chen, call sign Blade, led the four-ship formation with the kind of precision that had earned her recognition as one of the Air Force's top pilots. "Ghost, this is Blade. We have visual on your position. Say status." Kira's voice crackled through the interference. "Blade, be advised we have multiple hostile aircraft in the area. Unknown configuration, advanced capabilities. They're after a passenger." "Copy, Ghost. We're here to escort you home." The mystery aircraft emerged from the storm clouds in perfect formation, their alien geometries reflecting lightning in patterns that seemed to bend reality around their edges. There were 5 of them now, arranged in a configuration that suggested both tactical awareness and technologies that existed decades ahead of anything in current service. Major Chen had flown against every air force in the world during training exercises, had studied every known aircraft design. But these things were outside her experience, outside her understanding. They moved with an intelligence that suggested either revolutionary AI or pilots with capabilities that defied current knowledge of human limitations. Ghost, can you identify these aircraft? Kira's response was grim. Negative, Blade, but I can tell you they're not friendly. The lead mystery aircraft suddenly accelerated, moving toward the commercial airliner with clear hostile intent. Its weapons systems powered up, energy discharges creating aurora-like effects in the storm-charged atmosphere. Major Chen didn't hesitate. All flights weapons-free, engage hostile aircraft. The F-22s dove toward their targets with devastating efficiency, their own weapons systems locking onto the mystery aircraft with electronic precision. But as they closed distance, something impossible happened. The enemy aircraft simply vanished from their targeting systems. Blade, I've lost target lock. Same here. They're using some kind of electronic countermeasures. Kira watched the engagement from the commercial airliner's cockpit, her professional eye cataloging the capabilities she was witnessing. The mystery aircraft weren't just advanced, they were operating according to principles that challenged everything she knew about aerial combat. But she'd faced impossible odds before, and she'd learned that every enemy had weaknesses. The trick was finding them before it was too late. Blade, this is Ghost. Try infrared targeting. Their energy systems are generating significant heat signatures. Major Chen switched to thermal imaging and immediately reacquired her targets. The mystery aircraft might be invisible to radar, but they couldn't hide from the heat they generated. Good call, Ghost. All flights switched to infrared. The battle was joined in earnest now, aircraft dancing through the storm clouds at speeds that would have been impossible for human pilots just a generation earlier. The F-22s used their superior agility to stay close to their targets, denying them the range advantage their energy weapons required. But the mystery aircraft had advantages of their own. They moved with coordination that suggested shared intelligence, anticipating the Raptors' maneuvers with uncanny accuracy. Whatever controlled them, human or otherwise, possessed tactical awareness that rivaled the best military minds. Major Chen found herself locked in single combat with the lead enemy aircraft, both pilots pushing their machines to the absolute limits of structural tolerance. Through her canopy, she caught glimpses of her opponent's cockpit and felt her blood freeze. The pilot wasn't human, at least not entirely. Ghost, you need to see this. Kira switched to the tactical frequency Major Chen was using and gasped at what the F-22's sensors revealed. The mystery aircraft's pilot was a hybrid, part human, part something else. Its proportions were wrong, its movements too fluid, its reaction times impossibly fast. My God, Morrison whispered from beside her, what are those things? The future, Kira replied grimly. Or at least one possible version of it. The battle raged through the storm clouds for 15 more minutes, neither side able to gain decisive advantage. The F-22s had numbers and agility, but the mystery aircraft had technology that seemed to ignore conventional limitations. Energy weapons lanced through the darkness, missing their targets by inches as both sides maneuvered desperately for position. Then one of the Raptors took a direct hit. Captain Rodriguez, call sign Thunder, ejected as his aircraft broke apart in a cascade of burning debris. His parachute deployed normally, but he was falling toward the ocean in the middle of a storm, miles from the nearest rescue vessel. The lead mystery aircraft broke off its engagement with Major Chen and dove toward the descending pilot, its weapons systems powering up for a killing shot. Whatever these beings were, they showed no mercy toward helpless enemies. but they had miscalculated. Major Chen rolled her F-22 inverted and dove after them, her own weapons locked onto the mystery aircraft's heat signature. At this range, even their electronic countermeasures couldn't prevent a clean shot. Her finger moved toward the trigger and stopped as she realized what she was seeing. The mystery aircraft wasn't moving to attack Captain Rodriguez. It was moving to catch him. Metallic arms extended from the craft's underside, grasping the pilot's parachute with mechanical precision. Instead of killing him, they were rescuing him. "What the hell?" Major Chen muttered, pulling her aircraft into a climb to avoid overshooting her target. The mystery aircraft's radio crackled to life. "Major Chen, your pilot is unharmed. We do not make war upon the helpless." The voice was different now, still metallic, still artificial, but tinged with something that might have been regret. "We seek only what was taken from us. Return Dr. Vasquez and this conflict ends." Kira keyed her own transmitter. "What was taken? Dr. Vasquez is a human being, not property. She carries within her mind the key to technologies that belong to us. Information stolen from our archives by your government's illegal experimentation." "What kind of information?" The pause was long enough that Kira wondered if she'd lost the connection. Then the voice returned, heavy with millennia of sorrow. "The means to heal the damage your species has inflicted upon your world. The knowledge to reach the stars without destroying yourselves. The wisdom to evolve beyond the cycle of violence that has defined your existence." Morrison looked at Kira with wide eyes. "Are they saying they're trying to save us?" "Maybe," Kira replied. "Or maybe they're very good liars." The mystery aircraft carrying Captain Rodriguez moved closer to the commercial airliner, its pilot, whatever it was, apparently waiting for a response. Through the F-22's canopy, Major Chen could see Rodriguez gesturing frantically, trying to communicate something urgent. "Blade, this is Thunder. Can you hear me?" "Rodriguez, what's your status?" "I'm okay, but listen carefully. These aren't enemies, at least not entirely. The pilot, it's trying to tell me something about Dr. Vasquez. She's not who we think she is." Kira felt ice form in her stomach. "Thunder, explain." "The pilot says Dr. Vasquez isn't human. She's one of them, placed in our society decades ago to study us. The knowledge she carries isn't stolen. It belongs to her people." The revelation hit Kira like a physical blow. Everything she'd thought she understood about this situation was wrong. Dr. Vasquez wasn't a human scientist who discovered alien technology. She was an alien scientist studying human civilization. And now her own people wanted her back. "Colonel," Morrison said quietly, "what do we do?" Kira stared through the cockpit window at the mystery aircraft holding Captain Rodriguez, knowing that her next decision would determine not just the fate of everyone aboard their aircraft, but potentially the future of human civilization itself. She keyed the radio with trembling fingers. "Unknown aircraft, this is Ghost. We need to talk." The response came immediately. "We are listening, Colonel Thorne." "If Dr. Vasquez is one of your people, why doesn't she just identify herself? Why the secrecy?" "Because she has learned to love your species despite its flaws. She wishes to protect you from those among us who would end this experiment permanently." "What experiment?" "The one that determines whether humanity is capable of evolving beyond its destructive impulses. Dr. Vasquez, her human name, chosen with care, has spent 30 years documenting evidence of your potential for growth. Her reports have convinced many that you deserve a chance to mature as a species." Kira absorbed this information with growing understanding. "And if she doesn't return?" "The experiment ends. Those who believe humanity is too dangerous to survive will have their way. Your civilization will be guided toward a more controlled existence." The words carried implications that chilled her to the bone. These beings, whoever they were, possessed the power to reshape human civilization according to their will. The only thing standing between humanity and total subjugation was one alien scientist who had learned to care about the species she was studying. "Colonel," Morrison's voice was barely a whisper, "what are you thinking?" Kira studied the formation of mystery aircraft surrounding them, noting how they maintained perfect position despite the challenging weather conditions. They could have destroyed the commercial airliner at any time during this encounter. Instead, they had shown restraint, even compassion, rescuing a downed pilot when they could have left him to die. Maybe they really were trying to save humanity. Maybe the choice wasn't between freedom and subjugation, but between evolution and extinction. She keyed the radio one more time. "Unknown aircraft, I'd like to speak with Dr. Vasquez directly." "That can be arranged." Minutes later, a voice Kira recognized from the passenger manifest came through the radio. But now she heard it differently, not as human speech with faint accent, but as something alien trying very hard to sound familiar. "Colonel Thorne, this is Elena Vasquez. I imagine you have questions." "Just one," Kira replied. "Do you really think we're worth saving?" The pause was long enough that she wondered if the transmission had been lost. Then Dr. Vasquez's voice returned, filled with warmth that transcended species boundaries. "Colonel, in 30 years of studying your kind, I have seen humanity at its worst. Your wars, your cruelty, your seemingly endless capacity for self-destruction. But I have also seen you at your best. I have watched mothers sacrifice everything for their children. I have seen strangers risk their lives to help people they will never meet again. I have witnessed your artists create beauty from suffering, your scientists pursue truth despite persecution, your ordinary citizens perform extraordinary acts of courage when circumstances demand it." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "Today, I watched 300 passengers follow your orders without question because they trusted you to keep them safe. I saw fighter pilots risk their lives to protect people they had never met. I heard you refuse to surrender even when surrender seemed like the only logical option. And your conclusion? My people ask if humanity deserves to survive. I say you deserve to thrive. But that choice must be yours to make, free from our interference. The knowledge I carry, it belongs to you now. Use it wisely." The radio fell silent as Dr. Vasquez's words sank in. She was choosing humanity over her own people, risking everything on the belief that humans could evolve beyond their current limitations. The lead mystery aircraft's pilot spoke again, its metallic voice now tinged with something that might have been sadness. "Dr. Vasquez has made her choice. We will respect it. But Colonel Thorne, understand that this decision carries great risk for all involved." "What kind of risk?" "Those among us who oppose this path will not accept defeat easily. They will come for her and for the knowledge she carries. You must be prepared to defend both." Major Chen's voice cut through the transmission. "Ghost, we've got multiple contacts approaching from the northwest. Fast movers, military configuration." Kira felt her heart sink as she recognized the implications. The enemy faction had arrived, and they weren't interested in negotiations. "All aircraft, this is Ghost. We have hostile contacts inbound. Prepare for engagement." The mystery aircraft that had been escorting them suddenly accelerated, moving to intercept the approaching threat. Their weapons systems powered up with brilliant flares that lit up the storm clouds like artificial lightning. "Colonel Thorne," the lead pilot transmitted, "we will attempt to delay them, but their forces are superior. You must reach safety quickly." "Where?" Morrison asked desperately. "Where can we go that they can't follow?" Dr. Vasquez's voice provided the answer. "There is a facility in Alaska, Elmendorf Air Force Base. My people have agreements there, ancient agreements that even the opposition must respect." Kira nodded grimly. "Captain, set course for Anchorage, maximum speed." The Boeing 777 banked toward the north as behind them, two factions of an alien civilization prepared to battle for the future of humanity. Energy weapons lanced through the darkness, creating aurora effects that would be visible from space. But Kira's attention was focused forward, on the long flight ahead and the responsibility that now rested on her shoulders. She had become the guardian of humanity's future, and she would not fail in that duty. The sky ahead was clear, filled with stars that suddenly seemed much less distant than before. Dr. Vasquez had given them the key to reaching those stars, if they could survive long enough to use it. Ghost, this is Control. We show you departing your assigned flight path. What is your status? Kira smiled as she keyed the transmitter one final time. Control, this is Ghost. We're coming home, and we're bringing the future with us. Behind them, the battle raged on, but ahead lay Alaska, safety, and the beginning of a new chapter in human history. The woman they'd once called too aggressive for her own good had just saved her entire species. It was, she reflected, the perfect end to an imperfect career. The Boeing 777 limped toward Elmendorf Air Force Base on fumes and determination, its hull scarred by energy discharges that had come too close for comfort. Through the cockpit windows, Kira could see the aurora borealis painting the northern sky in sheets of green and gold, a natural phenomenon that seemed almost mundane after witnessing alien energy weapons tear through storm clouds. Morrison's hands trembled slightly on the controls as he initiated their approach, the stress of the past 6 hours finally taking its toll. Colonel, I've never flown an approach under these conditions. My instruments are showing interference patterns I've never seen before. Kira nodded, understanding his concern. The alien technology Dr. Vasquez carried was affecting their electronics in subtle but measurable ways. Navigation systems flickered between readings, altitude indicators wavered, and the autopilot had disengaged completely an hour ago. They were flying on manual control and pilot instinct. Trust your training, Captain, she said quietly. The fundamentals still apply, regardless of the circumstances. In the passenger cabin, Dr. Vasquez moved among the travelers, her alien nature no longer hidden behind human mannerisms. She walked with fluid grace that seemed to defy the aircraft's turbulence, and when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated in frequencies just beyond human hearing. Yet somehow, instead of fear, her presence brought comfort to the exhausted passengers. Ladies and gentlemen, her voice came through the intercom, we will be landing soon at a secure facility. I want you to know that your courage today has changed the course of history itself. You have become unwitting participants in humanity's greatest moment, the day your species chose evolution over extinction. Through the tactical frequency, Major Chen's voice crackled with static. Ghost, we've lost contact with the engagement zone. No word from our escort aircraft. Kira felt her stomach tighten. The alien faction that had supported Dr. Vasquez's choice might have paid the ultimate price for their defiance. Copy, Blade. Maintain overwatch until we're on the ground. The lights of Elmendorf Air Force Base appeared through the darkness like a constellation of hope. The base's control tower had been expecting them. Somehow, word of their situation had reached the highest levels of military command. Emergency vehicles lined the runway, their red and blue lights creating patterns that reminded Kira of the energy discharges she'd witnessed during the battle. United 847, this is Elmendorf Tower. You are cleared for immediate landing on runway 06. Emergency services are standing by. Morrison lined up their approach with textbook precision, compensating for the electromagnetic interference that continued to plague their systems. The runway lights grew larger, more defined, offering the promise of solid ground after hours of uncertainty at 37,000 feet. But as they descended through 2,000 feet, Dr. Vasquez's voice cut through the radio chatter with urgent warning. Colonel Thorne, we have a problem. My people's opposition has found us. Through the darkness beyond the runway threshold, shapes moved with predatory intent. Not aircraft this time, but ground-based units that had somehow penetrated one of America's most secure military installations. Their forms were angular, alien, designed for purposes that human minds could barely comprehend. Tower, this is Ghost. We have hostile contacts on the ground. Request immediate security response. Copy, Ghost. Be advised, we're already engaging. Maintain your approach, we've got you covered. The base's defensive systems came online with devastating efficiency. Surface-to-air missile batteries tracked the approaching threats, while ground troops deployed with weapons that Kira hadn't seen before. Energy-based systems that suggested human-alien technological cooperation went back much further than anyone had publicly acknowledged. Morrison fought to maintain their approach as energy discharges lit up the airfield around them. One of the alien ground units fired what appeared to be an electromagnetic pulse weapon, causing every light on the base to flicker momentarily before backup systems engaged. "Colonel," Morrison said through gritted teeth, "I don't think I can put us down safely with all this activity." Kira studied the tactical situation through the cockpit windows, her mind automatically calculating vectors, trajectories, and probability matrices. The base's defenders were holding their own, but barely. More alien units were emerging from concealment positions that suggested they'd been preparing for this moment for years. "Captain, continue your approach. We land no matter what." "Ma'am, if we take a hit during touchdown, then we die trying to save the future instead of dying for certain in the air." Kira's voice carried the absolute conviction that had defined her career. "Those people back there trusted us to get them home. We don't let them down." Dr. Vasquez appeared in the cockpit doorway, her alien features now fully visible in the instrument lighting. "Colonel, there is another way. My people have emergency protocols for situations like this." "What kind of protocols?" "I can establish a protective field around the aircraft during landing, but doing so will reveal my true nature to your military commanders. Once they know what I am, there will be no going back to the life I've built here." Kira met the alien scientist's eyes, seeing depths of intelligence and compassion that transcended species boundaries. "Dr. Vasquez, I think that life was already over the moment you chose to save us." A sad smile crossed the alien's features. "Yes, I suppose it was." She closed her eyes and extended her arms, and suddenly the aircraft was surrounded by a shimmering barrier of energy that deflected the hostile fire crackling around them. The Boeing 777 descended through the chaos like a ship sailing through a storm, protected by forces that existed beyond human understanding. Morrison stared in amazement as his instrument stabilized, the electromagnetic interference fading as Dr. Vasquez's protective field filtered out the alien weapon's effects. "My God, Colonel, how is this possible?" 30 years of technological development that we're just now learning about," Kira replied, watching the runway approach with renewed confidence. "Hold her steady, Captain. We're almost home." The touchdown was perfect, a gentle kiss of rubber against concrete that would have made any airline instructor proud. As the Boeing 777 rolled down the runway toward the terminal, the battle around them began to subside. The alien opposition forces were withdrawing, their mission apparently failed. But Kira knew this was only the beginning. The secret Dr. Vasquez carried would reshape human civilization, and there would be others who opposed that change. The war they just fought was merely the opening skirmish in a conflict that might last generations. As the aircraft came to a stop, she turned to face the alien scientist who had risked everything for humanity's future. "Dr. Vasquez, welcome to Earth, officially this time." The alien's laughter was like music from distant stars. "Thank you, Colonel, though I suspect my real work is just beginning." Through the terminal windows, Kira could see military personnel setting up a perimeter that looked more like a first contact protocol than a routine security detail. Whatever happened next, the world would never be the same. She had started this flight as a retired pilot catching a ride to Tokyo. She was ending it as humanity's first guardian in an interstellar age. The sky above Alaska had never looked so full of possibilities. General Patricia Harrison stood in the secure briefing room at Elmendorf Air Force Base, studying satellite imagery that showed the aftermath of humanity's first acknowledged contact with an alien civilization. The photos revealed scorch marks across the airfield where energy weapons had touched down, debris from aircraft that shouldn't exist according to any known technology, and in the center of it all, one commercial airliner that had somehow survived what military analysts were calling an impossible tactical situation. "Colonel Thorne," she said as Kira entered the room, still wearing the civilian clothes she'd put on for a simple flight to Tokyo 12 hours earlier. "I've read the preliminary reports. I'm having trouble believing them." Kira took the offered seat across from the general, noting how the room's occupants, a mix of military officers, intelligence analysts, and civilians with security clearances that probably required congressional approval, all seemed to be studying her with the kind of intense focus usually reserved for specimens under microscopes. "General, with respect, I'm having trouble believing them myself. 6 hours ago, the most exotic aircraft I'd ever encountered was the YF-23 prototype. Now I'm apparently briefing senior command on humanity's first interstellar war." "Is that what this was, a war?" Kira considered the question carefully, remembering the moment when the alien escorts had chosen to protect Captain Rodriguez rather than eliminate him. More like a very intense disagreement about humanity's future, and we were the subject, not the participants. Dr. Vasquez sat at the far end of the conference table, her alien features now undisguised in the fluorescent lighting. She had shed her human appearance like an uncomfortable costume, revealing the elegant, elongated proportions of her true form. Her skin had a subtle luminescence that seemed to shift with her emotional state, and her eyes held depths that suggested intelligence spanning centuries rather than decades. "General Harrison," Dr. Vasquez said, her voice now carrying harmonic overtones that resonated in the listener's bones, "I understand your difficulty in accepting this situation. My people spent considerable effort ensuring that first contact would occur gradually, over generations, to minimize the psychological trauma to your species. But something changed," General Harrison observed. "Yes, a faction among my people decided that humanity was developing too quickly, becoming too dangerous to be allowed unrestricted technological advancement. They wanted to intervene directly to guide your civilization along more controlled pathways." Colonel James Mitchell, the base intelligence officer, leaned forward with barely concealed skepticism. "Dr. Vasquez, you're asking us to believe that your people have been observing human civilization for how long?" "Since your species first developed agriculture, approximately 12,000 of your years." The silence that followed was deafening. Kira watched the faces around the table as they struggled to process the implications. 12,000 years of observation meant that human history as they understood it had been written under alien scrutiny. "And in all that time," General Harrison said slowly, "you never made contact." "We made contact many times. Your mythologies, your religious traditions, your stories of gods and angels and demons, many of these were encounters with my people, filtered through cultural understanding that had no framework for extraterrestrial life." Dr. Sarah Kim, a linguist from the Defense Language Institute, spoke up from her position near the room's recording equipment. "That would explain the commonalities in mythological structures across cultures that had no contact with each other. Indeed, my people influenced your development subtly, providing technological and philosophical advances when your species seemed ready for them, but always indirectly, always in ways that allowed you to believe the progress came from your own innovation. Kira found herself thinking about the implications. So everything we've achieved, flight, space travel, computer technology, was within your capabilities all along. We simply encouraged discovery along certain pathways while discouraging research into areas that might have led to premature self-destruction. Colonel Mitchell's expression darkened. You manipulated us. We guided you. There is a difference. Dr. Vasquez's luminescence shifted toward cooler blue tones, suggesting emotional distress. Your species has tremendous potential, but also tremendous capacity for violence. Left completely alone, you would have destroyed yourselves within centuries of developing nuclear weapons. And now, General Harrison asked, now you face a choice. My people's protective influence is ending. The knowledge I carry, the technological advances that could solve your environmental crisis, enable interstellar travel, and eliminate resource scarcity, comes with responsibility. You must prove you can handle it wisely. The weight of that statement settled over the room like a physical presence. Humanity was being offered the keys to the universe, but only if they could demonstrate the wisdom not to use them destructively. Kira broke the silence with a question that had been nagging at her since the encounter began. Dr. Vasquez, why me? Why did this situation fall to a pilot who was supposed to be retired? The alien scientist's expression softened, her luminescence warming to golden tones. Colonel Thorne, do you truly believe this was coincidence? My people have been observing you specifically for the past 5 years. Your psychological profile, your tactical capabilities, your ethical framework, everything suggested you were the ideal candidate to handle first contact. You planned this. We planned for the possibility. When the opposition faction moved to retrieve me, we ensured that someone with your specific qualifications would be available to respond. Dr. Vasquez paused, studying Kira's expression. Though I admit, we did not anticipate you would be traveling as a passenger rather than a pilot. General Harrison stood abruptly, her expression troubled. Dr. Vasquez, are you telling us that humanity has been under surveillance by alien intelligence for 12 millennia, and we're just now finding out about it? General, consider the alternative. Would you have preferred to learn this truth when your species was less technologically advanced? During your medieval period, perhaps, or during your industrial revolution? The general's silence was answer enough. Dr. Vasquez continued, my people waited until you had developed space flight, nuclear weapons, and global communication networks before revealing ourselves. Even now, we move carefully. Full disclosure of our presence would cause social, religious, and political upheaval that could set your civilization back centuries. Or advance it by millennia, Dr. Kim observed quietly. Yes, that is the gamble we are taking. Dr. Vasquez's attention turned to Kira. Colonel Thorne, you have become humanity's first official ambassador to an interstellar civilization. The question is, are you prepared for that responsibility? Kira looked around the room at the faces of people whose worldview had been fundamentally altered in the span of a single briefing. Military officers trained to defend against human enemies were now grappling with threats from beyond the stars. Intelligence analysts accustomed to terrestrial politics were suddenly dealing with interspecies diplomacy. And at the center of it all sat a woman who had spent 30 years pretending to be human, while documenting whether humanity deserved to survive its own adolescence. Dr. Vasquez, Kira said finally, I have one more question. Ask. In 30 years of observation, what convinced you that we're ready for this responsibility? The alien scientist was quiet for a long moment, her luminescence cycling through colors that had no names in human language. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries of careful observation. Colonel, I have watched your species accomplish miracles born of desperation. I have seen you sacrifice individual desires for collective survival. But most importantly, I have seen you change. In just the past century, you have begun to recognize that your planet is a closed system, that your actions have consequences beyond your immediate environment. She gestured toward the window, where the aurora borealis continued its ancient dance across the northern sky. You are beginning to think like a spacefaring civilization, even if you do not yet possess the technology to become one. That evolution of perspective is what convinced me you are ready for the next step. General Harrison sat back down, her expression grim but determined. Dr. Vasquez, what exactly does this next step involve? Integration. My people will begin sharing selected technologies, but slowly, carefully, with oversight to ensure they are used responsibly. Climate management systems to reverse environmental damage, medical technologies to eliminate most diseases, energy production methods that could power your civilization for millennia without environmental impact. And the cost? Proof that you can use these gifts wisely. Each technological advancement will require demonstration of ethical application before the next level becomes available. Colonel Mitchell leaned back in his chair, running his hands through his hair. This is insane. We're talking about the complete transformation of human civilization. Yes, Dr. Vasquez agreed simply. That is exactly what we are discussing. The room fell silent again as the implications sank in. They were sitting at the threshold of a new age for humanity, but the transition would be neither simple nor guaranteed. They would have to earn their place among the stars through wisdom, restraint, and moral evolution. Kira found herself thinking about the passengers on Flight 847, how they had responded to crisis with courage and unity despite having no understanding of what was at stake. Maybe that response was exactly the proof Dr. Vasquez's people needed. General, she said, addressing Harrison directly, I think our first priority should be preparing humanity for gradual disclosure. The people on that aircraft handled the truth remarkably well, but they had the advantage of experiencing it firsthand. Agreed, we'll need to develop protocols for controlled revelation of information. General Harrison turned to Dr. Vasquez. How much time do we have before your people expect an answer about humanity's readiness? There is no deadline, General. This process could take generations. My people are patient. We measure progress in centuries, not years. The alien scientist's expression grew serious. But the opposition faction is also patient. They will continue trying to prevent humanity's advancement using methods that may become increasingly direct. More battles like the one tonight. Among other approaches, they may attempt to manipulate your political systems, your economic structures, your social networks. Their goal is to demonstrate that humanity cannot handle advanced technology responsibly. Kira felt a chill as she realized the scope of the challenge ahead. They weren't just fighting to protect alien technology. They were fighting to prove that humanity deserved a future among the stars. It was, she reflected, the kind of fight that could define a species for millennia to come. And somehow, a pilot who had been planning to spend her retirement fishing in Montana had become one of the primary weapons in that fight. The aurora continued its dance outside the briefing room windows, painting the sky in colors that suddenly seemed less like natural phenomena and more like signals from civilizations that had learned to touch the stars without destroying themselves. Humanity's test had begun. 3 weeks after the incident that military files would classify as Operation Starbridge, Kira stood in a hangar at Area 51 that officially didn't exist, looking at an aircraft that shouldn't be possible according to human engineering principles. The craft was roughly the size of an F-22 Raptor, but its angular, crystalline structure seemed to bend light around its edges in ways that hurt to look at directly. The basic principles are not as complex as they appear, Dr. Vasquez explained, her alien features now completely undisguised as she gestured toward the craft's propulsion system. Your species already understands electromagnetic field manipulation through your rudimentary anti-gravity experiments. This simply represents a more sophisticated application of those concepts. Colonel Mitchell, who had been assigned as the Pentagon's liaison to what was being called the Starbridge Integration Program, studied the alien technology with the expression of someone whose worldview was being systematically dismantled and rebuilt. Dr. Vasquez, our most advanced anti-gravity research produces barely measurable effects. This thing can apparently exceed Mach 15 in atmospheric flight. The difference is in understanding how electromagnetic fields interact with spacetime itself. Your current physics considers them separate phenomena. They are not. Kira walked around the craft, noting details that her pilot's eye automatically cataloged. No visible air intakes, no exhaust ports, no control surfaces in the traditional sense. Yet somehow this machine could outmaneuver anything in the human arsenal while operating in complete silence. How long would it take to train human pilots to operate this? She asked. With current human understanding, perhaps 50 years for basic competency. Dr. Vasquez's expression shifted to what Kira had learned to recognize as alien humor. However, with proper neural interface technology, that time could be reduced to approximately 6 months. Neural interface. Direct connection between pilot consciousness and aircraft systems. Your thoughts become control inputs. The craft responds to intention rather than mechanical manipulation. The implications made Kira's head spin. Flying had always been about the relationship between pilot and machine, but this was something entirely different. A fusion of human consciousness with alien technology that could literally make the impossible possible. General Harrison entered the hangar flanked by a security detail that included both human personnel and, Kira noticed, several figures whose proportions suggested they weren't entirely human. The integration program was apparently proceeding faster than anyone had anticipated. Colonel Thorne, the general said, we've received word from Washington. The President has approved Phase 2 of the integration protocol, which involves public disclosure, gradual, carefully managed, but disclosure nonetheless. General Harrison's expression was grim. Dr. Vasquez's people have detected increased activity from the opposition faction. They're preparing to make contact with human governments directly, bypassing the integration protocol entirely. Dr. Vasquez's luminescence shifted to deep red tones that Kira had learned indicated serious concern. General, if the opposition succeeds in establishing direct contact with your political leadership, they will offer immediate technological advancement in exchange for accepting their guidance. Many of your leaders will find such offers difficult to refuse. And if they accept, humanity becomes a client species, technologically advanced perhaps, but no longer capable of independent development. You would spend the next millennium as a junior partner in a civilization you did not help build. Colonel Mitchell looked up from his examination of the alien craft. As opposed to the current situation, where we're being gradually introduced to technologies we also didn't build. The difference, Colonel, is choice. Under our integration protocol, humanity retains control over the pace and direction of technological adoption. Under opposition guidance, those decisions would be made for you. Kira found herself thinking about the passengers on Flight 847, how they had responded to crisis with courage and independence despite being completely outmatched by the forces arrayed against them. That spirit of self-determination was apparently what this entire conflict was really about. General, she said, what does Phase 2 specifically entail? Selected disclosure to key world leaders, followed by controlled revelation to the scientific community, then gradual release to the general public over the next 18 months. General Harrison paused, studying Kira's expression, and it requires a demonstration of successful human-alien technological integration. Meaning? Meaning you're going to learn to fly that thing. The general gestured toward the crystalline aircraft. And then you're going to prove to the world that humans can handle advanced technology responsibly. Dr. Vasquez moved closer to the craft, her hands passing over its surface in patterns that caused sections of the hull to become transparent, revealing internal systems that pulsed with soft bioluminescence. Colonel Thorne, this aircraft was designed specifically for human neural patterns. Learning to pilot, it will require you to think differently about the relationship between consciousness and technology. How differently? Currently, when you fly, you process sensory input, make decisions, and implement those decisions through physical control inputs. This system eliminates the middle steps. Intention becomes reality without conscious interference. Kira stared at the alien craft, understanding that she was looking at technology that could fundamentally change what it meant to be human. The neural interface Dr. Vasquez described wouldn't just make her a better pilot, it would make her something new, something between human and alien. The risks, she asked. Psychological integration can be challenging. Human consciousness is not naturally designed for direct technological interface. Some test subjects experience difficulty distinguishing between their thoughts and the aircraft's responses. And the benefits? Dr. Vasquez's expression brightened, her luminescence shifting to warm gold tones. Colonel, you would become the first human capable of true interstellar flight. This craft can travel between star systems, explore worlds your species has only dreamed of visiting. The offer hung in the air like a challenge. Kira had spent her career pushing the boundaries of what was possible in aviation, always reaching for the next level of performance, the next impossible maneuver. Now she was being offered the chance to transcend those boundaries entirely. But she was also being asked to become a bridge between two species, a demonstration that humanity could evolve beyond its current limitations, without losing its essential character. General, she said finally, when do we start? Tomorrow. Dr. Vasquez's people have established a training facility in the Nevada desert. Full immersion program, classified at levels that require periodic memory verification. Colonel Mitchell looked up from his technical analysis with concern. Memory verification. Neural interface training involves accessing levels of consciousness that humans don't normally experience, Dr. Vasquez explained. Some participants have difficulty maintaining clear recollection of which experiences were real and which were interface-generated. Periodic verification helps maintain psychological stability. Kira absorbed this information with the kind of calm acceptance that had characterized her entire military career. Every advancement in aviation had involved risk, from the first powered flight to breaking the sound barrier to entering space. This was simply the next step in that progression. Dr. Vasquez, she said, I have one condition. Name it. If this goes wrong, if the neural interface causes permanent psychological damage, I want you to promise that the integration program continues with another candidate. Humanity's future is more important than any individual pilot. The alien scientist studied Kira for a long moment, her luminescence cycling through colors that had no human equivalent. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated with something deeper than hearing. Colonel Thorne, that attitude is precisely why my people believe humanity deserves to reach the stars. Outside the hangar, the Nevada desert stretched toward horizons that suddenly seemed much less distant than before. Tomorrow, Kira would begin training for flights that would take her beyond the solar system, beyond anything that current human technology could achieve. But tonight, she stood in a secret hangar looking at an impossible aircraft, knowing that she was about to become the first human being to truly touch the infinite. The stars above Area 51, had never looked so much like destinations rather than distant lights. The neural interface chamber looked more like a medical facility than a cockpit, its walls lined with monitoring equipment that tracked everything from brainwave patterns to cellular metabolism. Kira lay on what Dr. Vasquez called an integration couch, a device that looked like the product of a collaboration between NASA engineers and alien biotechnology. The initial connection can be disorienting, Dr. Vasquez warned as technicians attached neural sensors to Kira's temples. Your consciousness will expand to encompass the aircraft's sensory systems. You may experience vertigo, spatial displacement, or temporary confusion about the boundaries of your physical self. Dr. Sarah Kim, who had been assigned as the project's psychological monitor, leaned over Kira's position with a reassuring smile. "Colonel, remember that you can request disconnection at any time. We're monitoring your neural activity continuously." Kira nodded, trying to project more confidence than she felt. In 23 years of military aviation, she had never encountered a situation where the aircraft could potentially think back at her. "Dr. Vasquez, what exactly am I going to experience when the connection establishes?" "Initially, you will become aware of the craft's spatial position with the same clarity you currently have about your own body. You will feel its structural integrity, its energy flows, its relationship to gravitational and electromagnetic fields." The alien scientist paused, her luminescence shifting to thoughtful blue tones. "Then, as your consciousness adapts, you will begin to perceive space itself as navigable terrain." "Meaning?" "Meaning you will understand, on an intuitive level, how to manipulate spacetime geometry to achieve faster-than-light travel." The words sent a chill through Kira that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. She was about to gain knowledge that most humans wouldn't acquire for centuries, if ever. The responsibility was staggering. "Begin the connection sequence," she said. The first sensation was like stepping into a perfectly fitted suit of armor that extended infinitely in all directions. Kira could suddenly feel the craft's hull as if it were her skin, its power systems as if they were her heartbeat, its sensor arrays as if they were extensions of her nervous system. "Neural integration at 15% and rising," Dr. Kim reported. "All indicators stable." The chamber around her seemed to fade as Kira's perception expanded beyond her physical body. She could sense the hangar's walls, the personnel monitoring her condition, the electromagnetic signatures of nearby equipment. But instead of feeling confined by these boundaries, she felt as though she could reach out and touch them directly. "Integration at 30%. Colonel, how are you feeling?" "Like I'm becoming something larger than myself," Kira replied, her voice sounding strange in her own ears. "I can feel the aircraft systems responding to my thoughts before I'm conscious of having them." Dr. Vasquez moved into her expanded field of perception, her alien physiology visible not just as visual input, but as patterns of energy and consciousness that were far more complex than her physical form suggested. "Colonel, you are experiencing the earliest stages of transcendent awareness. Your species calls it intuition, but it is actually direct perception of information that exists beyond normal sensory channels. The aircraft is alive. Not alive as you understand the concept, but aware. It possesses a form of intelligence that complements rather than replaces human consciousness. Think of it as a symbiotic relationship rather than a tool-user dynamic." The integration deepened, and suddenly Kira could perceive space itself as a three-dimensional map that extended far beyond Earth's atmosphere. She could see, no, feel, the gravitational wells of nearby planets, the electromagnetic signatures of distant stars, the complex topology of spacetime that her human mind had never been equipped to comprehend. "Integration at 60%, Dr. Kim announced, her voice now sounding distant despite being only feet away. "Neural activity is showing patterns I've never seen before." "It's normal," Dr. Vasquez assured her. Human consciousness is extraordinarily adaptable. Colonel Thorne is simply accessing mental capabilities that your species possesses but rarely uses. Kira could now perceive the aircraft's propulsion system as an extension of her will. Instead of thinking about thrust vectors and aerodynamic forces, she found herself understanding how to manipulate the fundamental structure of space to achieve movement. It was like discovering she had always possessed the ability to fly, but had simply never realized it. Dr. Vasquez, she said, her consciousness now spanning both her physical body and the craft systems, I can see possible flight paths that extend beyond the solar system. Is that normal? You are perceiving what we call the navigation matrix, the network of gravitational and electromagnetic pathways that connect all points in the galaxy. With proper understanding, any location becomes accessible. Integration at 80%, Dr. Kim reported, now sounding genuinely concerned. Colonel, you're approaching the threshold where previous test subjects experienced psychological displacement. Kira was aware of Dr. Kim's concern, but it seemed distant, unimportant compared to the vast landscape of possibility that was opening before her. She could see Earth from a perspective that had nothing to do with physical location, as a node in a vast network of interconnected worlds, each with its own pattern of life and consciousness. I can see other worlds, she whispered, inhabited worlds. The network connects them all. Colonel, Dr. Vasquez's voice carried new urgency. You must maintain focus on your human identity. The integration process can overwhelm individual consciousness if you allow it to proceed too quickly. But Kira was already moving beyond the boundaries of normal human experience. Through the neural interface, she could perceive alien civilizations scattered across thousands of light years, each with its own relationship to the navigation matrix that connected the galaxy. Some were ancient beyond human comprehension, others were just beginning to understand their place in the cosmic community. And all of them were watching Earth. Integration at 95%, Dr. Kim announced. Colonel, I need you to acknowledge your human identity. State your name and rank. Kira struggled to remember why that information mattered. Her consciousness now encompassed far more than the identity of a single human pilot. She was becoming aware of herself as part of something vast and interconnected, a network of awareness that spanned the galaxy. Colonel, Dr. Vasquez's voice cut through the expanding awareness like a lifeline. Remember Flight 847. Remember the passengers who trusted you to bring them home safely. The memory snapped Kira back to herself with startling clarity. She was Lieutenant Colonel Kira Thorne, call sign Ghost, and she had responsibilities that transcended personal experience. The integration was offering her knowledge and capability beyond anything she had imagined, but she was still human, still committed to serving her species' interests. Integration stabilizing at 90%, Dr. Kim reported with obvious relief. Neural patterns are showing human baseline signatures. Kira opened her eyes, when had she closed them, and found herself looking at the chamber's ceiling with perception that extended far beyond normal vision. She could see through the walls, through the Earth itself, to the stars beyond. But now that expanded awareness felt like a tool rather than a replacement for her human consciousness. How do you feel, Colonel? Dr. Vasquez asked. Like I've just learned to see in dimensions I didn't know existed, Kira replied honestly. And like I understand, for the first time, how small our solar system really is. She sat up slowly, noting how the movement felt different when her consciousness extended beyond her physical body. The aircraft's systems responded to her intention to sit, adjusting their configuration to accommodate her changed position, even though she wasn't physically connected to the craft. The symbiosis is stable, Dr. Vasquez observed with satisfaction. You have achieved the deepest level of integration we have ever recorded in a human subject. What does that mean, practically speaking? It means you can now pilot this craft through interstellar space with the same intuitive ease that you previously flew atmospheric aircraft. The navigation matrix is as accessible to you as a flight plan. Dr. Kim was studying her readouts with fascination. Colonel, your neural activity is showing patterns that suggest enhanced cognitive capability across multiple domains. Pattern recognition, spatial reasoning, information processing, everything is operating at levels significantly above human baseline. Kira stood and walked to the chamber's observation window, looking out at the Nevada desert with vision that could now perceive the planet's magnetic field, the solar wind's interaction with Earth's atmosphere, and the gravitational influences of nearby celestial bodies. It was overwhelming and exhilarating simultaneously. Dr. Vasquez, how long will these effects last? The neural pathways created by integration are permanent. You will retain enhanced awareness and spacecraft control capability for the remainder of your life. The alien scientist paused, studying Kira's expression. You have become something new, Colonel. Not quite human as previously defined, but not alien either. You are the first member of what your species will eventually become. The weight of that statement settled over Kira like a physical presence. She wasn't just learning to pilot advanced technology. She was becoming a prototype for humanity's future evolution. Every decision she made, every capability she demonstrated, would influence how her species developed over the coming centuries. Through the neural link, she could sense the alien craft waiting in the hangar, its systems eager to explore the vast network of pathways that connected the galaxy. But she could also sense something else, other consciousnesses, alien and hostile, moving through that.